It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. Or you can just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. And if you like our show today, be sure and check out our new Patreon. All the shows in the member section are now up in Patreon. Not all of them, but I'm uploading them all there to Patreon. And also, too, the shows that we normally would do on Saturday nights are also in Patreon now. Our archives are always free. Go to Spreaker.com, and you can find our guests there. We've done many, many shows. I guess about 6 or 7 shows with Ted Rubenstein, who is a legend in the field of JFK research, assassination research, organized crime research. He's worked with Larry Flynt Publications, Mae Brussels, and Dave Emory. He's also helped me a lot, too. He's a guy I go to when I need advice or some help or locate a guest for me and stuff like that. He's always been a great help to this show. Ted Rubenstein, are you there?
Oh, thanks for the generous introduction, and hello to you and your audience.
Wait, didn't you just write this introduction? Thank you so much. Ted.
Oh, you had to give it away, didn't you?
Yeah, so what's on your mind these days, Ted? What do you got going?
Well, I thought maybe today we'd talk about Johnny Roselli.
Okay, Johnny Roselli. Now, I know the name, right? Johnny Roselli is an organized crime figure back in the 60s and 70s, I guess, right?
Yes.
So tell us, who was...
demise in the 70s.
Yeah, 76 it looks like, yeah. And now, it says he disappeared. Oh, I don't know where it is. So who was Johnny Roselli, and why should we care?
Yes. Well, mainly we should care because his name figures prominently in JFK assassination research, either as somebody who's exposing one scenario of it or alternatively concealing his own role in the assassination. Take your pick. But he made his bones, so to speak, in the 20s under Al Capone and Tony Accardo and so on. But he first was charged with selling narcotics he came to this country with his immigrant parents, and he was not born in this country. And I think at 17, he was busted for selling narcotics to an undercover agent, and he went on the lam and changed his name. He was in New York at the time, and he fled to Chicago. And the guy who was going to testify against him in that narcotics case was not the cop, but I think the witness who was going to testify who was found murdered. And anyway, he changed his name from Felipe Sacco to Johnny Roselli. And he became, up-and-comer in the Chicago mob. And they decided to place him on the West Coast in Los Angeles to safeguard their interests in the budding movie industry, and also possibly with the racing wire services and bookmaking. But anyway, he was involved in the 40s with a far-reaching extortion plot that built a lot of Hollywood stars, and a bunch of organized crime figures were convicted, and he was one of them. And the key witness in that case, a guy named Willie Beoff, was later blown up in his car, I think in Arizona in the 50s. So he served time behind that. He also was implicated in the Friars Club cheating scandal. That was a card club that operated in L.A., and they had some hidden cameras, and they were, reading people's cards and then passing it on to the inside players. And it got busted, and he went down on that rap. He also was implicated in. He was also in. They also, after being in L.A., the mob decided to move him to Las Vegas, where he apparently oversaw the mob's interest in the casinos there, particularly the skimming. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Okay, and he was implicated in hidden ownership of the, I forget which casino it was. Might have been the Flamingo. But anyway, he got a grant of immunity for that, and he testified in that case. And there were no repercussions from that.
Well, that's interesting, because normally you hear these stories that the omerta, like the code of silence. But he was a made guy, but he got immunity and testified against his co-defendants and still went on to continue in organized crime?
In that one case.
Yeah.
Now, in the 60s, in 1967 to be specific, he was in trouble with the government, and he was facing deportation when they found out he changed his name, and he wasn't legal to stay in the country with the narcotics charge, which he was convicted of in absentia, I believe. So they were going to deport him, and he was looking to use any leverage he could against the government. So he had his lawyer leak a story to Jack Anderson about what seemed like a fantastic story at the time, which was that the CIA had gotten in bed with the mafia, specifically to devise ways to kill him. And the CIA would be happy, and the mob could get their casino interests and also the narcotics route back through Cuba. And according to Roselli, the CIA contracted with Robert Mayhew, a name I know you know,
Yeah.
To be the go-between to Johnny Roselli, and then Roselli would go to Giancana, who they were calling Sam Gold in this plot. Now, Giancana didn't have the contacts in Cuba that another famous organized crime figure that figures in this prominently did, who's Santo Trafficante, who had all these contacts in Cuba. And so it came out that, and was confirmed that Roselli's story was true.
Well, not only that, but if you listen to the interviews I did with Jim Hunt, the nephew of Frank Sturgis, Frank Fiorini, he talks about Sturgis, the Watergate burglar and alleged JFK shooter, that he was friends with Trafficante and Johnny Roselli and Giancana.
I don't know about Giancana, but
possibly not.
I think he was connected to. I know he knew Trafficante, and I believe he probably knew Roselli, because Roselli was working at the San Souci casino in Havana, and Sturgis, for a while, was the head of the casinos under Castro in the brief period before Castro closed down the casinos and jailed Trafficante at the time.
All right.
So that part before. So what you said is accurate. Now, this is 1967 that the story that Jack Anderson ran this story, which didn't identify Roselli as a source. I believe it identified Edward. It might have identified Edward Morgan, the lawyer, but I'm not sure. But anyway, this was the same time that Garrison was undertaking his JFK assassination investigation, first intending to go after David Ferry, who died mysteriously, and a week later, Garrison charged Clay Shaw instead with conspiracy to assassinate the President of the United States. Now, it's believed that Jack Anderson may have published this story to muddy the waters and to take Garrison down a false trail. But why would a false trail that implicated the mafia? Roselli also said that one of these teams that went down to kill Castro was turned around by Fidel, and that hit team came back and killed Kennedy.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
At some point in time, they changed their target and killed Kennedy.
Yeah, what do you make of that? And there was a lot of that flipping around because, like you said, Sturgis was supporting Castro at first, and he flipped around and became anti-Castro. And so there was a lot of flipping back and forth. Well, what do you make of that story about the hit team going down?
I do think the part of the mystery of the Kennedy assassination is wrapped up in the CIA mafia plots to kill Castro, and you can argue how much the Kennedy brothers knew about those plots. But at any rate, I would argue that they were involved with these elements to some extent. They went way over their heads, and whatever they intended to do about Cuba backfired against JFK.
You know, I always suspected, too, that when you hear about this Bay of Pigs invasion and how they were supposed to get certain air support and water support that they didn't get. I always suspected that was the CIA going rogue along with their organized crime buddies trying to get the casinos back. And that's why Kennedy says, I don't know what's going on here, but I'll take responsibility for it. And but I'm going to break up the CIA because they're out of control.
Well, it's so complicated. I mean, Kennedy assumed blame for the failure of the operation, but privately he blamed the CIA. And, of course, there was a lengthy investigation by the CIA, which he blamed in various places. It seems for sure that the CIA misled Kennedy by saying that U.S. air power wouldn't be needed past a certain first airstrike. There was some planes used that had no markings but they weren't going to use. Kennedy was insistent that no U.S. military forces be used so that they could have some measure of plausible deniability. So Kennedy was not going to approve what he would need to approve in order for the invasion to have succeeded. So that's why the exiles blamed Kennedy for the Cubans dying on the beaches in considerable number.
Well,
but,
Ted,
there are some people that believe that they were just trying to force Kennedy's hand, and that even though he said he wasn't going to commit air support, that he would have no choice but to do that in order to make the invasion succeed. But he refused to do it, and then so he caught hell for it.
Now, and by the way, that does seem to be true. Because what's his name? Jim Rothstein was part of the Bay of Pigs invasion, and he hated the left for the rest of his life. He became extremely right wing because he felt he was betrayed in the Bay of Pigs invasion. But the thing is, now
you hear it a lot among that community. Yeah.
Now the thing is back this thing about sending assassins down and then being flipped and coming back. That's similar to the Marita Lorenz story, right?
How so? She just says that a bunch of friends, Sturgis and a bunch of his pals, like the Novo brothers and so on, went from Miami to Dallas to kill Kennedy. She didn't say anything about being turned around by Castro.
But wasn't her story that she was sent out to kill Castro, but became involved with Castro romantically?
She did do that. She was given cold pills to give to him, and she chickened out, and she didn't use them. And Castro knew full well she didn't have the heart to do it. And then Castro apparently handed his pistol over to her and said, "Look, you want to shoot me? Shoot me." But she said, "Oh yeah, you know I can't," or something.
What a wild time in history, you know? All these characters running around, gambling, the casinos, drug running. Sturgis had his own B-25 bomber plane jet in a hangar down there in Florida. Just doing stuff, man, like just no accountability. And I was even looking at, too, when you were talking about this with the Friars Club, it was Frank Sinatra who sponsored Roselli to get into the Friars Club there.
Absolutely. I just read that today myself. Now, that Friar Club thing is interesting because Sirhan's lawyer